Everyone. I'm Manisha, the founder of Modulo. I wanted to take a moment today and talk about modular learning as a principle distinct from homeschooling. And I've been doing a lot of soul searching lately, and I feel like it's important to talk more about modular learning and some of the learnings that I've had about education and what works for kids and why I started this company. So I haven't really prepared very much what I'm going to say, so I am winging it a little bit here. But first of all, if you go back 10 years ago, I was thinking a lot about the things that concerned and upset me in the world. Climate change, what I perceived to be a lack of critical thinking and ability of people to think for themselves, this huge divide between people on the left and people on the right, and not a lot of willingness to talk to each other and see each other's point of view. And I did a bunch of research and I learned more and more about the impact of giving people access to education, just starting with a child's ability to read and how far that can get them in terms of getting better work, getting medical care, and then seeing people who were really connected in their communities and helping and aware of what was going on with people around them, and then some people who seemed really disconnected from the type of pain that their actions could inflict on the world. And in my personal view, right now we're seeing a lot of lack of care for our communities, especially among, I'll name it, some of the billionaires who just seem to really care about their bottom line and not about supporting the people who work for them. And so, as a teacher, I also, while I was thinking about all of these ideas, encountered an education system that just didn't seem to make sense in any way at all to me. An education system where there were a lot of teachers who cared a lot, but there were a lot of children who were struggling to pay attention, who were bored, who disliked school. Something that I saw a lot was just quite a lack of inefficiency. I tutored children on the Upper East Side in Manhattan whose parents spent $60,000 a year on their education, plus needed to get 4 hours of tutoring every night because the teachers were coming to expect that students had tutors and just kept making the classes harder and harder. And I saw children who were throwing up in my tutoring sessions because they were experiencing so much anxiety. And at the same time, it didn't really feel like they were deeply learning math or French or some of the other subjects I was working with them on. And that the entire school was more centered around seeing how many children can we get into an Ivy League university instead of how many children can have a deep, rich learning experience that helps them thrive in life. On the other hand, I taught in schools, public schools in New York, where I really felt more like I had just entered a prison instead of entering a place of learning, where children were just yelled at all the time, had no desire to be there, and the only way to get them to sit still for 6 hours a day was to threaten, coerce them. And then I would go 2 blocks down and you would have this well-funded, successful public school with a very different demographic of students, where still, even in schools where the PTA was raising hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, my music class didn't have any instruments for kids to practice on. And so I just felt like this whole system was so messed up. And through that process, I discovered something amazing, which was the growing movement of families who were starting homeschooling co-ops. And through homeschooling co-ops, the movement of parents who were educating their children themselves. I met entrepreneurs, artists, teachers, people who were not raising their children alone, but raising their children in community and developing really unique and effective ways for them to learn and to thrive and to become people who knew how to have healthy attachments to their communities and their friends. And so from these homeschooling communities I encountered, I distilled what I'm going to lay out today, which is the 10 principles of modular learning. Because as homeschooling has grown, what I have witnessed is that there are many, many more homeschoolers than ever before who are trying to replicate school at home. And for me, that completely misses the point of this incredibly rich and impactful type of education you can give children. An education where they're thriving intellectually, reaching their full potential, have unique interests, are self motivated, confident, love learning. And this is the kind of education I want to give every family access to. And so I'm going to be talking more and more about it. So today I'm going to talk about the 10 principles of modular learning. I've written them down on this very messy piece of paper. So, number one, the actual education part of where we think of education only needs to take place 1 or 2 hours a day. It's so important to know this when you're starting out homeschooling because a lot of families just assume they have to pack in tons of hours a day. But when you go to a school environment, what you see is that kids are studying in a group, sitting still for 6 or 7 hours a day. That's very different than a homeschooler who has a really fantastic math curriculum that they engage with, math curriculum that's based on their unique learning needs, and an English language arts or an all-in-one curriculum or a literacy curriculum that's just a perfect fit for them, whether that's a program like Handwriting Without Tears that's geared towards children with sensory challenges, or an amazing math program like Beast Academy that's structured like a video game for kids who really want to learn that way. The thing is, it's very difficult for any human to concentrate really fully for more than 2 or 3 hours a day, and some research has shown that for younger kids, it can be hard for them to really focus for more than 45 minutes or an hour every day. So the idea behind modular learning is that we just choose 1 or 2 hours a day where our children are really, really fresh and we focus on those core foundational subjects. And the thing is, when children are learning one-on-one, and by one-on-one, I can mean with a parent or a caregiver or independently, if they have a curriculum they can work through themselves. When they're learning that way, they learn so much faster than they would in a traditional group setting. We call that principle one-on-one mastery learning. There's so much research on it, starting with Bloom's 2 Sigma problem. I can drop a link in the comments. And the homeschoolers that I know whose children are learning the most and the fastest have this approach where they choose the 1 or 2 hours a day where their children are really fresh and focused and they do math and English language arts. This kind of work is actually replicated. You see it in tech companies with designers. They usually are only focusing 3 or 4 hours a day doing really highly creative work. So when you start homeschooling, before you think about any of your schedule or your curriculum or anything like that, I really encourage you to think about this principle that homeschooling, the academic part only needs to take 1 or 2 hours a day, and best when your child is really fresh and energized. It doesn't really work as well after school because they're not fresh and energized and they're trying to catch up with schoolwork as opposed to studying in a way that's independent of school. So choose a great curriculum, choose hours where they're fresh. We have seen so many stories of kids who have just gone through the entire K through 8th grade math curriculum at 6 months because they're sitting there with a great curriculum, learning at their own pace, getting help from a parent or a caregiver when they need it. Okay, so this brings us to the second principle of modular learning, which is that boredom is gold. Our job is not to entertain our children. Our job is to honor their natural drive to learn. So when you only focus an hour or two a day on these core subjects, that frees up tons of time for mind wandering. And you can look up self-directed learning, mind wandering on the internet. It's just so vital that children have this time for their wheels to turn, to discover what they're interested in, to follow that natural desire to learn. Babies have tons of time for mind wandering, and this is how they pick up new languages or learn to walk, not through formal instruction. And children need that, adults need that. I often take an hour or two for a walk before I sit down and do these podcast, YouTube recordings, or I write for my Substack to give myself that space and time. So if you want to have a self-directed learner, an autodidact, leave lots of space and time for their mind to wander. And that can potentially even be a time where you're working. And you just explained to your child, this is my time to work and this is your time for mind wandering. And we each keep to our own corner. And again, I know it's hard because we are so conditioned to get anxious when our kids are bored and they can complain about being bored and be really angry. But if you can allow them to be in that space for a few minutes, for a few hours, maybe even for a few weeks, whoa, what riches emerge. language. I know kids who have taught themselves sign language on YouTube, other kids who are poets and artists or just moving their bodies. Maybe other kids gravitate more towards playing with friends during that time. So give that time to them. Now, I will say it's a lot easier if you're starting when your child is young. Once a child is being pulled out of school, they're used to a coercive environment. They're not used to having time for their mind to wander. So it can take them a lot more time to adjust to all of that freedom. And it can be quite challenging. And so often we talk about kids needing to go through a period of deschooling. All right, so principle 3, take your kids with you everywhere. I was really fortunate to have a single mom who just brought me everywhere, to the bank, to her study skills classes she taught at Cornell. Everywhere my mom went, I went, even if that was considered kind of a boring place. And I learned a lot just going through her life with her. That bond between you and your child is so crucial to supporting them in building a foundation for confidence their entire life, spending time with you. Also, think about it. Back in the day, everybody learned it through being an apprentice. If your parent was a shoemaker or your family friend was a shoemaker, you would just go and apprentice the shoemaker. So spend lots of quality time with your kids, take them everywhere. There have been some studies about alcoholism and addiction showing that children who spend more time with their families, and of course, when you heal the family dynamic, that helps heal addiction. And when you just get more time together to nurture those bonds, children are less prone to addiction. So just spend that boring time together. There's a clip I love from Ted Lasso where if you've seen that show, it's a really fun one where the woman who runs the soccer company is trying to figure out what to do with her goddaughter. And then one of the soccer players says to his niece, listen to this. Hey, Phoebe, that's his niece. Do you want to go to the dentist with me? And she's so excited just to accompany her uncle anywhere. Your kids want to spend time with you, and it's so good for their learning. Okay, next principle, find your community and share care. What I was really thinking deeply about, how do these homeschooling communities work so well? And there was something I couldn't quite articulate. And what I realized is that in this world of increasing isolation, homeschooling communities are uniting around this shared value of education. And this value of education helps them get through rough times. So they're sharing childcare, they're sharing skills. A lot of times you'll see one parent is a science professor and he'll do a science lab for the kids, or the parents will start a co-op together, or maybe it's just as simple as one parent hosts a game night and the other kids come, and that gives the other parents a break. A lot of older teens might tutor kids in the homeschooling community. So I tell parents, if you are going to homeschool, more important than anything else, than your curriculum, than your academics, is find your community. And that can just be as simple as going online and just deciding, looking for a group in your area, or, even not going to a homeschool group, just posting on a regular group and saying, hey, I'm looking for other homeschoolers to connect with. Even though homeschooling is growing a lot, it's still counterculture. And there may be times where you feel like you're not doing enough, that you're just crazy to be doing things counterculture like this. Why can't you just do everything like everybody else? And then being part of community, it helps you see, okay, some people are a little further ahead of you, some people are a little behind you, whatever that means. And you can support each other and uplift each other through this. Education is not meant to be done in a vacuum. And many people think of this image of the lonely, isolated homeschooler, and that's really not the way it's supposed to be. You're not supposed to be your child's only teacher. Homeschooling works because it actually is co-learning, unlike school, where you're outsourcing your child's education to this institution. Homeschooling communities are raising children together. And so before, even when you're just thinking about homeschooling and not sure if it's right for you or not, plug into a community, go to a meetup, start connecting with people. That's that's just essential for thriving in modular learning. And if you don't have a community, message me. I will help you find someone. So that's really day one. Okay, next principle. We already touched upon this a little bit. Principle 5, find curriculum your children love. Okay, so learning is fun. Learning is exciting. When I was a child, I was so lucky because I loved learning. Every single family I've ever talked to whose child had low math confidence, math anxiety, any kind of special need, once we connected them with the right curriculum, all of a sudden that turned from a subject the child disliked to a subject a child loved. And that's why in Modulo, I've put so much effort into identifying these different children's archetypes. We have the free curriculum planner on Modulo. Now we have the AI learning concierge. So, for example, if your child has ADHD, loves playing outside, you cannot get them to do a single workbook ever, they might love the curriculum Wild Math for their math. It's a nature-based math curriculum, and it was actually developed by a special needs teacher with an ADHD child who could not get her son to focus at school, and then built this whole new math curriculum, this multi-sensory curriculum for him. On the other side, if your child is on the autism spectrum, maybe loves video games, just says, I don't understand the point of math, I don't like it, try Beast Academy online. It's so much like a video game, it's so fun, it's based on conceptual understanding. On another note, we also love Prodigy Game. Prodigy Game has these great extrinsic rewards. It's built like Pokemon. So they combine the intrinsic of, wow, you got a math question right, with this extrinsic of, hey, you won a little wand or some other type of goodie. And that's just a really great way to help a kid who thinks, I'm not very good at math, to start feeling like, wow, I have these bells and whistles that acknowledge that I'm good at it. Another kid might just thrive with workbooks, and Critical Thinking Company can be a great choice for that child. It's just your whole experience of modular learning is going to be different if you just take that time to find a curriculum your child loves. There are so many options that have been created by parents who are teachers and who are actively homeschooling their kids for their own child. So they've iterated based on their child's experience. So there's really no reason you can't find something that they're going to just thrive with. I recently have gotten into crash course YouTube videos, which are just so fun and compelling and intriguing. Some kids love YouTube videos. So take that time to find a curriculum your child loves. Learning shouldn't feel like a chore. It doesn't need to. There's plenty of resources that will make it fun. And when it's fun, you're not going to have a fight about learning, because your child is going to want to do that activity. They're going to see it as a game, as a joy, as something that helps them grow. All right, what's the next principle here on this messy sheet I scrambled my madness to write? Okay. Number 6, here's a good one. Time for you. So for those of you who were getting a little nervous when I said take your child everywhere, I just want to acknowledge that there are plenty of people out here who do not want to spend all their time with their kids. In fact, there are certain people who only want to spend a really tiny amount of time with their kids, and that's totally okay and doable in modular learning. I usually recommend that you carve out at least 3 hours a week for you. So a great example of this is Julie Bogart from Brave Writer. She's a homeschool mom, and she was inspired to build this game-changing writing curriculum. And in order to do that, she took 3 hours a week where she would just go to the library and work on her own projects. So if you're somebody who's a single parent, that can be a little more challenging, but that's where principle number 4, find your community and share care, comes in. You can find someone who can take your kids 3 hours a week. Now, this is important. Some people are more extroverted or introverted or of another personality type, and maybe you need 10 hours a week to yourself, or maybe you're somebody who needs 15 hours a week, or maybe you need 1 hour a week. The amount of time that you carve out for your alone time is time that you're nurturing yourself so that you can be really present with your children and, quite frankly, have a great life, because it's not all about you being a slave to your kids. So you're going to need to find out what time you need. Don't let it get to the point where you just feel like you want to leave your entire family for a year because you've had it, or you just cannot homeschool because you've had it. This is just so vital. And if you are in a partnership, lucky you, and you're the main breadwinner and the other parent is spending more time with their kids, have that conversation to make sure that they're getting that time they need to recharge, enjoy their life, whatever it is that's going to help them going on a weekly or on a daily basis. So Make sure you take that time for you. And if you do encounter resistance from your kids, I find the best way to handle that is to explain very clearly to them why you need that time and how it benefits you and how it also benefits them. So take that time for you. Principle 7. Ooh, scheduling. So a lot of people, when they start modular learning, want to know, how do I create a schedule? So we already talked about carving up those 1 to 2 hours a day of focused study time, the mastery-based learning. But what I would say is that very few homeschool families actually use a time schedule, like 9:05 a.m. this, 10 a.m. this. There's some people do, and that works really well for them. So if your child responds really well to times of day that they're going to be doing this more focused one-on-one mastery learning and more mind-wandering time or an extracurricular, I would just say that's great. If it works, don't. If it works for you, use it. In a very fundamental way, modular learning is okay, get up, have some breakfast. When your child is having their happy focused time, do that 1 hour of math and 1 hour of English language arts. If you can help them with it, great. Otherwise, there are tutors available. There's just so many studies that show family involvement in education makes an impact. You don't have to spend more time than you probably should be spending helping them with homework. So maybe that time is going to be 7 or 8 at night. For me, it's probably 10 or 11 in the morning that works best. Some kids focus better after lunch. So that 1 or 2 hours of time, and then 3 or 4 hours of just nothing. It's a huge mistake to overschedule in the beginning of homeschooling. I know so many homeschoolers were just kind of in a jam because they just layered on every single class or activity their kid wanted to do instead of leaving that open blank space to just be and explore and do more open-ended projects or closed-end projects if that's what your child is gravitating towards. And just the difference between a closed project and an open project is an open project would be kind of like tinkering around, drawing without any certain painting in mind, browsing through books. A closed project might be, I am going to build a computer and going through all of those things until you finish your computer, or I am going to write a research paper on the history of plant biology in Malaysia. And then it's going to be, there's a end product to that. So both open-ended and closed projects are both really valuable and should be included. Anyway, that's a bit of a distraction. So we were talking about scheduling. So it can be as simple as 1 or 2 hours a day of that focus time and then the mind-wandering time. And of course, you also have your own priorities, especially if you work from home, especially if you're a single parent or both parents work from home. So whatever you decide that schedule is going to be like, write it somewhere. Make sure your kid is really kind of aware of what it is, has agreed to it. Now, there's some other ways to schedule, and we have a whole big old blog about scheduling. Sometimes when you do work and your child is younger, you may need a lot more scheduled time. And so so you can kind of create a schedule around like, this is the time that I kind of need to be focused and not interrupted, and you need to find an activity to do. So you can do that through an actual schedule, 10:05 to 10:55, and then they know that the lunch break is at 11:30. Or you can have a jar. So basically what families do is they have this jar of activities, and a kid can maybe pull an activity, and that can be the way that they schedule. So there's the kind of block scheduling and the time scheduling and the little jar scheduling, lots of different options like that. And of course, if you do need a break, you can schedule in some activities, a homeschool co-op, a class. My favorite hack is having a friend over. You give the other parent a break, you earn a break, and the kids play together. And then if you have siblings, that's helpful too. But I would say what's really critical is for the child to kind of have a framework around when you need that time for yourself. Some kids do really well just working under the desk. Maybe I have a kid here right now working under my desk. And, they're coloring away. Other children need someone to be with them at all times. That's tends to be more the case with younger children. But again, children don't really need someone to be engaging them all the time. Can just be really enough to be present with the child, although you do need some engaged time, especially if you find that your child is getting really needy of your attention. That might be a single signal that you might just need to take a 5-minute or a 20-minute walk together and just give them that completely undivided attention. It's pretty wild when a child does get that kind of neediness going on, that if you kind of half focus on them, it doesn't really fulfill that need. But if you can just stop and take 5 minutes where you're completely focused on them, then that need sometimes gets filled. And of course, it's different with every child. I know that that might feel a little bit complex around scheduling. And the reason it might feel complex is that everybody's work schedule is very different. So if you're a stay-at-home parent, it can be much more simple, like breakfast, lunch, dinner, study time, time for myself, mind-wandering time. If you both work full time, then you have to be a lot more specific about when's your time to focus, that the child needs some other type of activity to engage them, or if you're somebody who needs a lot of time for yourself. So I hope that's a bit helpful, and we can talk a little bit more about scheduling, but the key is really finding a schedule that works best for your family given your work context. And you don't need to cram in a ton of study. All right, so what are we are? Okay. Oh, principle 8. So this principle, very, very, very key to modular learning. Learn with your child. This has so many benefits. It's really more of an attitude than anything else. So when your child is approaching a new topic, you're not going to know everything, but what you are good at is learning. So for example, let's say you're studying math together. You don't really feel like you're someone who's great at math, and you come across an algebra problem that you don't know how to solve. Well, what can you do? You can ask ChatGPT together how to solve that problem. Keep asking questions. You can go on YouTube and find a video about it. Often the tool itself will have little videos that you can watch. So your child can watch you learning and you can learn the concept together. I bet there is very few concepts, even advanced physics or algebra, that you can't figure out with your child. It might even be calling an expert in the field, maybe somebody in the family. And the thing is, when you're in that process of learning, children are going to learn how to learn. And I would take it even further than just studying with them. If you're trying to fix something in the house and you make a mistake, call it out. Say, I was really frustrated when I was trying to do that, but I decided to push forward anyway, and I'm so glad I did. And here are the resources that I use to support me. Because sometimes, especially if your child is gifted, they might have a perfectionist complex. And when they see you learning and failing and continuing, that teaches them to have a growth mindset. So if you have any concern about your own ability to homeschool, just remember, you might not be able to teach, but you are capable of learning. And if you're capable of learning, you're capable of modeling to your child how to learn. And through that, they are going to develop the most important skill they will ever have in life, which is how to learn and how to grow. Can even be something like Spanish that you might not even speak. You can find the tools to learn how to learn Spanish. That's what your child needs to see, is your ability to learn. And guess what? The benefit is that you do get to learn, which is a pretty wonderful experience, in my opinion. All right, so we are at Principle 8, learn with your child. And Principle 9, Okay, this one is a really fun one. There's no secret advantage to school. So I know this is a tough pill to swallow, but I cannot tell you the number of times. I mean, when I started my first company that was focused on homeschooling, I had I had probably taught 2,000 children in over 30 or 40 different types of schools. Some of the best private schools in the world, 3 different countries, some of the most failing public schools in New York City, in IEP, which is special needs classrooms, in some of the most successful public classrooms. And I just didn't see any of it making a lot of sense. Like, when do we need to use these long division techniques that we're learning in this class? How, all of my energy is being spent doing behavior management. So many times people come with this concern of like, I just want to keep the door open to school. I just want to make sure that my kid is doing as well as other kids in school. But unfortunately, every single time I step back into a classroom, I realize none of it makes sense. And the reason for that is that we have this massive institutionalized educational system that's designed to make sure that the least number of people don't learn, just don't fail absolutely. It's not really a system that's designed at all to nurture the needs of an individual child. So any teacher worth their salt is going to tell you that your child is going to learn better if you can teach them yourself. It's not necessarily that they're going to learn better if, some people still might have some fear about kids not making friends, which is a whole other topic. Homeschoolers have lots of friends. And as we talked about, that family attachment is such a key foundation to socialization. If you don't believe me, you can watch our episode with the four incredible college students who talk about their social experiences and are so grounded and mature. And you have these incredible communities, but we're not talking about that right now. What we're talking about is that there's no secret advantage to school. So if you find yourself saying, okay, I think we need to get this tutor or do this subject because it's done in school and I'm not really sure why, but I'm sure they have a good reason. Get to the bottom of that reason. I'm not saying that nothing about school makes sense, but if you don't understand why school does something in a certain way, it might be for no reason. You're not going to serve plain cheese, plain bread sandwiches at your house because they do it at school. The reason they do it there is because it's cheaper for a group of kids to eat that way, just as a way maybe the reason they're teaching math in a certain way is because there are better corporate lobbyists who are trying to force that system on kids. So just please don't assume. And I think it's kind of sad. Like a lot of parents end up just going to an online school or not using this mastery-based approach because they assume, okay, there's a reason that these kids learn all these 7 or 8 subjects in this particular way. And I just don't understand what it is. The system is very inflexible. It's very institutionalized. You're really going to do better if you just put all of that aside and say, what does my child need to thrive in this changing world? Is it multiplication? Okay, well, can you find an example of when they might need to use multiplication in their lives? Okay, maybe yes, but maybe you can't, maybe no. So just be careful about that one. Don't assume there's secret advantages to school that you just don't know about. When I was a teacher, I so often saw parents being disempowered by the system by saying, you just don't know how to be a teacher, and so you need to give that job to us because we're better qualified to teach your kid. But in fact, no one's better qualified to teach your kid than you. You went through 18, 14 years of school. You understand how you learn. Your child probably learns in a similar way. You can give them your full undivided attention and see what's working, what's not. Teacher does not have that luxury. Teachers are taught how to manage large groups of students. They're not taught how to necessarily differentiate learning for your individual child. So just have a little confidence in yourself and a little faith that you know what you're doing. All right, no secret advantage to school. That's a big one. We could have a whole episode on that one. 10, become an entrepreneur. All right, so if you're just starting out, maybe you haven't even had a kid yet, maybe you have a new kid, maybe you have kids and you have a job, be an entrepreneur. I think that modular learning is all about entrepreneurship. It's about empowering children to create their own projects, to bring their own value into the world. If you become an entrepreneur, you start your own business, whether that's renting out a room on your apartment or starting a marketplace in tech or sewing your own sweaters and selling them online. You will build the kind of flexible life that will allow you to travel around the world, that will allow you to spend time with your family, that will allow you to curate an education that works for your child, that will model a lifestyle for your child. If you're an entrepreneur, they'll learn how to be an entrepreneur. So if there's any thought in your mind about instead of having a job, becoming an entrepreneur and starting some type of business, do it. You're going to have a better life and your child is going to learn a lot, and modular learning is going to be a whole lot easier because you can curate the whole childcare situation a bit better. All right, so those are the 10 principles, and then I have a bonus. Number 1, the actual learning only needs to take 1 to 2 hours a day because of mastery-based learning. Kids learn a lot quicker than they do in a group setting. Number 2, family attachment. Take kids everywhere. That forms healthy bonds and helps them learn. Number 3, boredom is gold. Carve out time for mind wandering and self-directed learning. Wait, that was number 3. Number 3, boredom is gold. Number 4, find your community and share care. That maybe should actually be number 1. That is how you keep your confidence and educate children together. Number 5, find a curriculum your child loves. Modulo can help with that. Number 6, carve out time for you at least 3 hours a week. The community will help with that. Number 7, choose the organizational system that works for you. Scheduling doesn't have to be on this time-based schedule. Number 8, learn with your child. That is probably the most useful skill you can teach them, how to learn by modeling learning, and it helps you overcome that fear that you're not qualified to teach a certain subject. Number 9, there's no secret advantage to school. Number 10, become an entrepreneur. And I'm just going to add a bonus here. Forget everything that I said. I mean, you have this deep innate knowledge of what your child needs, and you should trust that. Every single rule of modular learning I found here, I can provide an example of how someone did it beautifully and not at all in this way. So just, you have been told and told and told that you should outsource your child's education, that you'll have a better life, that your child will learn better. But I want you to take back your power and don't listen to your fear, don't listen to your emotions, listen to your gut. Think about how much you want to offer your child. Think about what's best for them and trust yourself. And have a wonderful day. Ultimately, modular learning is about love. It's about loving yourself, loving your child, loving learning, and then watching that love grow and take care of the whole world.